I'm Marianne. I help people with their love relationship, especially the communication. And I live in the Netherlands, as you can maybe tell from my accent, but I work with people from all over the world, which I really love to do. On my YouTube channel, if you're curious, I'm giving a lot of tips for how you can communicate in a better way with your partner, with your date. And I give also some demonstrations with my own partner if you're curious to check that out. And so today I'm going to watch this show called Love is Blind. It's a reality show in which men and women are meeting each other without seeing each other. And they're going to try to see if they have a connection, if they could be starting something. And so they're separated by a thin wall so they cannot see each other, but they can still hear each other. And then, at some point they have the option to propose to them. It's a reality show, so it has to be a bit sensational. At least that's my judgment. But so they can propose, and only when they're engaged, they get to see each other. And so then they have a few more weeks in which they're going to find out, how things are going between them and if they're going to say yes in front of the altar. And so in those weeks, I saw a lot of, typical situations, certain patterns that I see a lot between partners, maybe between human beings in general, happening. And I think it could be really interesting to look at that and to teach you things. I want to get really practical to really say, okay, in this kind of situation, you can do this and this. I want to give some credit, by the way, to Kirk Honda, which is a therapist who was giving comments to this show as well. I was very inspired by what he did. It was very captivating to watch. And I'm really happy that there's more people who are out there and who are wanting to contribute to more people learning about this, even if they don't really, maybe go to a professional. And so I really believe that we should be teaching this in schools, actually, and since we're not doing that, I hope to contribute in my way. So let's start watching the show.
I feel like I'm also a pretty sensitive guy, which can be good or bad.
I appreciate a man who has sensitivity. What's the last thing that you cried about?
So I really love that she's asking this thing, what's the last thing that you cried about? The way... what I'm assuming when I help people is that, all human beings want connection. Most human beings want connection. And the way to get there, I believe, is to have what I call vulnerable honesty, kind of more vulnerable communication. And so what does that mean? In daily life, we often talk on this level of thoughts, this level of opinions. This is kind of like this level where we easily can get into conflict or disagreement. Because it's kind of like, say, for example, my partner, he washed my sweatpants the other day and they turned out a little bit, he washed the white pants with the black stuff. So they turned out a little bit grayish, bluish, and I saw them. And then, what I could have done is I could have said, you messed up my pants. And this is a thought. This is not like, this is a bit of a judgment. And so when I say that, I basically say, you did a bad thing, right? You did something wrong. And you might say, well, that's true, right? Your pants are messed up. But the thing is, if you express it that way, what will happen is that, I'm saying, on some level, I'm saying you did something wrong. And then it's very likely for my partner to say, no, I didn't, right? So I'm saying you did something wrong. And he's going to say, no, I didn't. In whatever way, shape, or form, he might be saying, well, you didn't tell me how to wash your pants, or you put it with the other dark stuff, or whatever thing that might have been going on. And so when we do that, we're kind of reacting. I call it reacting to each other. It kind of goes quite automatically, because when a human being hears that they're wrong or they did something bad, quite quickly it becomes, what I believe at least, it becomes a little bit, painful, could be painful, depending on how big is the judgment, but it could be a little bit painful and also a little bit scary, because as a human being, you want to belong to the human tribe. That's I think a very core need, a very core, thing that keeps us safe, right? And so when someone says that you are bad in a way, that kind of like threatens, maybe unconsciously, but that kind of threatens that thing. And so we quickly want to say that we're not bad, And this is, this is defending yourself. And the other thing is, when I judge my partner that he messed up my pants, that he should have done better, that he should have taken care of it. That's kind of like more like attacking. And so when we're on that level, it's likely, and I'm not saying it always happens, but it's likely that there's disconnection. And so if you want connection, you want to go actually, let's say, a layer deeper. Because underneath all of those thoughts, there are feelings. And so this is a little bit, and I want to add as well that the method that I use called NVC says that there's not only feelings, but there's also universal needs. And I'm going to go more into that. It doesn't matter right now if you don't know what I'm talking about, but that's just to lay out a little difference. A lot of psychological theory says that, behind your thoughts, there are feelings. And NVC adds something to it that's very helpful and very interesting in my experience. And so, with going to the feelings, that's way more likely to be connecting, because there's no wrong or right. It's just like, I feel sad, I feel scared, I feel irritated. Maybe that could be a little bit threatening to hear sometimes, but I feel sad or I feel scared. Those kind of feelings are way easier to relate to and way easier to connect with. And so that's a long story to say that I like that she's trying to go to even more vulnerable feelings, right? Not just pleasant feelings, but also unpleasant feelings, to ask him, what's the last thing you were sad about? What's the last thing you cried about? Which I imagine can be very, very connecting. So let's see.
Mom was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, so it's just some of the difficult things with my mom.
I understand. I'm really sensitive about my family too. Like, sometimes I just love my family so much.
I feel the same way.
Oh my God, I'm getting emotional.
Yeah, well, I'm getting a little emotional. Wow, gosh.
Oh, Cameron, I wish I could hug you.
I would really love that.
I know. I have never talked this much about emotions in my life. Like, it makes such a huge difference when there are no distractions. Like, there's no phones, no text messages, no worrying about what people think or how we look. I mean, I'm sitting here crying with a man who I've never seen before.
I like that she, so I'm getting a bit emotional as well. I like, yeah, let's take a breath. I like that she makes this observation of like, yeah, in daily life, I don't get to talk about emotions so often because there's so many distractions. There's my phone, there's these other things, there's being kind of self-aware of the way I look. That's my interpretation, at least. Yeah, it requires something to have this safety to express your feelings, right? If someone has their phone even on the table, I'm speaking from my own experience, with the phone up and there's distractions coming up, I'm maybe less prone to share, kind of vulnerable things that I would like to be met with a lot of attention. Right, so I want to talk a lot about how you can create, because that's the big question, right? If you're okay, so we're often on this level of reaction, this level of reacting to each other and speaking in thoughts. How do you get to this level of feelings? What does it require in the level of needs? And what does it require for you to go there? And what does it require to invite someone else, your partner, to go there and to stay there? So I find it interesting that she notices that.
How's your date going so far?
I had 4 hours dates.
Yeah.
I've talked so much.
I was looking forward to seeing you.
Me too. We talk about so much stuff, then we don't ask the big questions,
Yeah, so this one, so let's do this. This date we'll dedicate to asking the big questions.
Totally. My last serious relationship was with a guy who's 41. At that point in my life, I felt like I was fast-forwarding my life a little bit.
Is that what you're worried that I'm feeling about you?
Yeah, I feel like you will be in that position with me.
I love what he's doing here. So what's happening is Jessica is saying, last time I was in a big relationship, it was with someone who was 41, and she's, I think, somewhere in her 30s. And Mark is in his 20s. And so she's saying, I want to talk about big stuff. And, you know, last time I was in a relationship, it was with someone who was 41. And she's not yet saying, you know, what to do with that. And Mark is making a guess. You know, is it that you, like I want to repeat, what is he?
Is that what you're worried that I'm feeling about you?
Yeah, so Mark is saying, is that what you're worried about that I'm feeling about you? So she was saying, I was fast forwarding my life a little bit, dating with this guy that was older than me, that much older than me. And so he's like, is that what you're worried about that I'm feeling about you? And so this is actually one way to invite someone to go to that level of needs, to kind of try to create connection. And that is to guess someone's feelings. So someone might be talking to you. She's just describing the situation, right? She doesn't yet share her feelings. Maybe she was planning to, I don't know. But she's just describing, like, you know, this is what happened in my last relationship. And then so she's not yet on this level of feelings. And he's actually inviting her to go there. You know, are you worried? Are you concerned that that's what might be going on with me? So I really love that. And sometimes people will go there with you. So sometimes they will say, yeah, indeed, yeah, that's what I'm worried about. Sometimes they might say, no, I'm not worried. And that's interesting because then two things might be going on. It might be that indeed they're not worried and they're going to share with you what's going on instead. It might also be that the no is not so much about the feeling, but the no is about going to that level. So whenever you guess someone's feelings and they have a no, or they might not say literally no, but I guess you get what I mean. They don't say yes, then it could be that they don't have the feeling, and it could be that they do, but they're actually telling you, you know, right now I don't feel safe to go to that level. And so then what you want to do is to, you know, if that's your partner, is to just go back up a little bit. Or actually, I would recommend to first meet them where they are. This is a term that I might be using probably a lot more, to meet people where they are. And so that the way to do that is just to kind of like repeat, for example, what they're saying. So she might say, no, I'm not worried. And you're kind of like, I think she is, but maybe she doesn't feel safe. And so you could say, oh, okay, you're not worried. You're just acknowledging whatever they're saying, so they feel safe that you're not going to, you know, you don't want to, how do you say that? You don't want to pull someone or like push someone to your level. They're going to pull back, right? They're not going to want to go there with you. And so just to acknowledge whatever someone's saying and to trust that, you know, maybe they are feeling that thing that you're guessing, but it's not about being right. I don't want to try to be right. Yes, you do feel concerned. I can tell from your face. You know, that's usually not really creating the safety. So let's see how she's reacting.
Yeah, I feel like you will be in that position with me, probably.
Don't let that be something that's...
So I like that she feels the safety to admit it.
Hello?
What's up, Jessica?
What are you doing over there?
Nothing, I just got here. Jessica, I really enjoy talking to her. She's just so freaking cool. So if we were married, what would you want your husband to be doing when you came home?
I like this question. It didn't even have to be anything really special, but just to come home and have you to like hang out with on the couch. Yeah. Just like arms.
Yeah, arms. Even if you've had a stressful day, I just want you to like look at me and be like, I'm just so happy to see him. You brighten up when you see me. That's all I want.
That's exactly what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
I work really, really, really hard. Having something to come home to is like the goal. After a couple conversations with Mark, I decided, you know, this is my guy, but now I'm questioning that a little bit because I'm having these really intense feelings for Barnett. At this point, I can see them both being my husband, which is crazy.
So she's saying, you know, at this point, I see them both being my husband, which is crazy. It reminds me of one thing that's, I think, very, very tricky in having a love relationship, which is to have a certain, and everyone has this, a certain picture of what a relationship should look like. Again, you're then on this level of thoughts, right? Which is not connecting. It's not just, this level is not just disconnecting with other people, but also if you if you are with yourself, if you're connecting with yourself. So if you know, all day long we're in a way talking to ourselves, right? And that's also, you can also do that on a disconnecting way and on a more connecting way. Anyway, so this having this kind of picture of what a relationship should look like is more on this level of thoughts. And so the picture of what a relationship should look like is something that, you know, is influenced by society, maybe our parents, maybe our own ideas. And so I hear her saying something like, you know, it's crazy that I have feelings for two people that I could both see as my husband. I understand what makes her say that, right? And at the same time, it points, I think, to something that is part of our kind of cultural picture of what relationship should look like, which is that, you know, we have these really strong feelings for one person for all our life. And I think a lot of people, I'm curious to hear in the comments if you can relate to this, but I think a lot of people have this, and I think it brings a lot of pressure to your relationship to think that, you know, that is what you're required to do. It makes it really scary to, I think, to step into a relationship if that's the thought, if you have to commit to, or to promise in a way that you will feel a certain way for so many years ahead, which is something that we cannot possibly predict. You know, we can make an estimation, of course, and there's nothing wrong with trying to do that and trying to think, you know, do I want to marry this person and stay with them for you know, a very long time, let's say. And yet having this picture as a kind of have to, as a kind of like, it's bad if it's, you know, I should know that for sure. That can be very, as I said, giving a lot of pressure, making it scared to even start a relationship. And what I'm hearing from her is that I would love for her maybe to have a bit more space. I think it's very normal that you can have a deep connection with many people at the same time, and there's nothing wrong with that. And so I wish maybe for her that she would have some softness about that, I guess. And similarly, if you are in a relationship and you have feelings for other people, again, I would wish for way more openness about this in society, I think, and also in relationships. I personally, you know, I've been in an open relationship, so I really learned in that relationship. I mean, it wasn't for me, it didn't work for me in the end, but I did learn a lot about being with a lot of compassion around having feelings for different people. It could be, you know, it could be just a little bit of attraction. It could be just a lot of appreciation for someone of the opposite sex or the same sex. And that there can be an open dialogue about that. And I think it's up to everyone to decide, you know, together with a partner, how much openness do we want about this. But to have that dialogue, at least to have that level of openness to kind of acknowledge, hey, you know, it's possible that, you know, at some point in our relationship that, you know, we meet someone else that's attractive to us, that's maybe we have a crush on, maybe we're even in love with. And, you know, what do we want to do with that? Do you want to hear that at that point? Maybe it's hard to predict, right? But it's good to have, I think it's helpful to have that talk. And so what I, for example, agreed to with my partner is that we do want to know that. We do want to hear that.
How are you?
Oh, so much better now. I've been thinking about you nonstop. Obviously.
I've been thinking about you too. I've been talking about you like crazy.
I love that. I've been like trying to imagine you. Obviously that's kind of impossible, but
it is.
In my mind it's almost like you can see me, but obviously you can't. I'm just like thinking I have to look good for her, but it's like, it's weird.
You say all the right.
Again, I really love this level of vulnerability that he has. Like, admitting that, you know, I kind of want to look good for you. I would say, I'm pleasantly surprised about this level of openness. And I imagine, you know, you can see how she's reacting to that. She really loves it.
Great stuff.
But it's true, though. It's true.
think I love you.
I love you.
Wow.
I love you.
I love you. Did we just say that?
Yeah.
Oh, I can't breathe. Okay. Are you crying?
A little, just a tiny bit. It's all becoming very, very real. I've fallen in love with her without ever having seen her. Part of me does think, are you being rash? But it feels so right.
It feels like I'm jumping out of a plane. Scary as fuck,
Yeah,
but amazing.
it is scary. But I trust you.
I trust you.
If we get married, then, that's it for me.
Yeah, me too.
We have to make it work.
And this is actually, so again, this is, I'm very touched by their dialogue. And what he's referring to right now is if I get married to you, that's it, we have to make it work. And yeah, on the one hand, maybe he has, certain values and just a very strong intention to make it work, which, so yeah, I would love if I would be coaching them, I would love to rephrase that a little bit to say, instead of saying we have to make it work, which is again on the level of thoughts, which can create pressure, it can create fear. I would love to adjust that a little bit and to say, I really want to make it work. I have a very strong intention to make it work. And I know that, maybe for some people they want a promise. And with MVC, the method that I use, we are a bit careful, if not altogether avoiding altogether. Sorry, my English. The concept of promise, because the concept of promise kind of says, and I guess marriage is all about that, right? So it can be a bit tricky maybe in that sense, that you promise something is kind of like saying, I'm going to do that for sure. I'm going to stay with you through sickness and health for sure. Which is something that, as human beings, we can't predict the future. We cannot possibly say how we feel even tomorrow. Things might happen that makes us really change our mind, change our feelings. And so I like to work with the concept of having a strong intention, which is more accurate, I think, in how it lives in us, in most of us at least. And it's more, it's less likely, because the problem with promise is really that it often leads to disappointment. So I promise I'm going to be home at 8. And then you're not, because of whatever reasons. And then there's anger and disappointment. You promised, So I like to slightly rephrase it. And it can still build trust, and you can still show how you really care. Right, so yeah, so that's a little something about promises.
Hey, what's up, Diamond? I've been waiting for you.
Oh, I've been waiting for you too.
I want to learn more about you.
What do you want to know? What you want to learn?
Your true, deepest, darkest fears as it relates to marrying someone.
Again, someone's asking about feelings, right? Because we want to connect.
I like the fact that you cannot see me. I like the fact that Carlton actually is really getting a chance to know me. I really like when he opens up to me. I think he shows that he trusts me. It shows that he is safe with me. It makes me feel like these are the words I've been missing from a man. My fear is getting hurt. I have been vulnerable, and in my past relationships, I felt like I was giving my all and trying to make that person happy.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I didn't, and that's why I'm here. I want to be happy. I don't want to be disappointed. I don't want to be embarrassed.
Right.
I've been taught.
She's sharing, I don't want to be disappointed. I don't want to be embarrassed. And he's saying, right, which I guess is supposed to express I get it. And I like if I were him and she was my partner or my date, let's say, I would have liked to connect with that a little bit more. Like for me, it's not fully clear. Like what was she embarrassed about? Maybe someone cheated on her. Maybe someone left her. I think she's trying. Cause I think it's important because I think she's trying to express what she's looking for in a man and what she's afraid of. And I think that can be something important for the other party, the other partner, potential partner, to know what that is. So, and I'm not sure if he's just saying I understand just as an automatic reaction, but I see it happening a lot, that someone is clearly sharing something vulnerable, and that the other partner goes, yeah, I understand, or yeah, I get it, because they've been taught that that's what you say, and they can sense that something vulnerable is going on, and they want to give safety to the other person. So they say, I understand, because that's somehow, they think that that somehow is going to bring safety. But what builds, I think, if you don't fully get it, I think it actually builds more trust if you say, can you elaborate? Can you elaborate on that? I really want to understand you. You know, I want to understand you. That's also can also bring safety to say that, as opposed to I understand when you kind of don't have a clue what someone's really saying. So yeah, I would really recommend. Sometimes we're not even aware. We're just like like listening. But if we would have to explain it to someone else what really was going on, we're not fully sure. And so you don't have to say I don't get it, because that might indeed be a little bit disconnecting or a little bit scary. But you can say, like, can you elaborate on that? I really want to understand. Or is it that you mean, and you can make a guess, is it that you were cheated on, or is it that what happened really, you know? So yeah.
To be strong. I've been taught not to cry. I've been taught to, I come from a strong cloth.
Yeah. How do you think I feel? It's like boys don't cry. Like that's constantly conditioned in black men's heads, like, since we're little boys.
I know.
I have had to learn how to open up, and it's okay to be sensitive and emotional and vulnerable. I'm a preacher's kid, and because I'm so outgoing, I'm so outspoken, people see me and they say, oh, he must not be insecure about anything. But sometimes on the inside, I haven't always felt that confident, and I've always been like this hopeless romantic. I want to be loved for who I truly am, unconditionally and without restraint.
Again, he says, I want to be loved for who I truly am, unconditionally and without restraint. And she's saying, and I guess we can all understand kind of the need, the need to be loved, the need to be accepted without restraint. And if this was my date, or if I were to help them, I would kind of want to make it concrete after getting that initial need clear. I like that they actually express these needs of like wanting to be accepted, wanting to be loved without restraint, as he calls it. And again, if you're trying to figure out, is this a match, and even if you have a partner and they're expressing this kind of thing, what I would like to do next, and let's see if they do that, but I'm guessing they don't, because we're not taught to do this, is to get concrete. So all these abstract needs of I want to be loved, I want to be accepted, I want to have a sense that I'm understood, I want to be heard. If we express that to our partner, they usually don't have a clue of how to meet those needs concretely. What does it look like? What do they have to literally do or say in order to give us that sense that we're loved unconditionally, or in order to give us that sense that we're understood, or whatever it is that he wants. And so it can be tricky, because if you don't do that, you might think that there's connection and understanding, or there might be connection, but you might think that there's understanding, and then your partner does something and you're like, hey, but you were supposed to love me unconditionally. But they never knew what that meant. And so it's kind of like almost, again, like making a certain agreement without actually haven't been clear what they're both saying yes to, or what she's saying yes to. So let's see if they make it more concrete.
Well, that's deep.
My biggest dream is that I finally find a wife who will love me unconditionally, who is kind of like that ride or die. But I have a big secret. At one point in my young adult life, I found myself attracted to just hearts, period. Like, it didn't have a gender. It wasn't about sex for me. I dated guys and girls, but I want a wife now because I feel like women bring a certain, like, nurturing, love and affection to the table that, like, I don't get from a guy.
Exactly. So here he's actually getting concrete. What does it mean for him, this unconditional love? It means that someone is okay with him being bisexual. And again, that you could make it even more concrete, right? What does it look like? But it's already a little bit more concrete. This is what he wants to know, actually, from her. Like, is she okay with that? Because that would give him this sense of being loved unconditionally. And so, yeah, and having said that, I feel a lot of softness for him. I can imagine he said something that his father was a preacher, I think. So I imagine that the way he grew up, it wasn't not very safe to talk about his sexual preference. And yeah, you know, I'm bisexual myself, and I can really relate to it not always being safe to say that, to get, you know, judgment and misconceptions and a lot of that. So it's interesting to me that he does want to say it on television. Like, he does want to share it with the world in a way, but not yet with her. So I imagine there's really something in him that thinks that, you know, a love partner in particular might not like this, or might not. Yeah, he says it's a secret, so I guess he's not ready to reveal it. So let's see.
My biggest worry is that I will find someone that I'm super in love with and want to marry, and then at the last minute, she will not be able to walk down the aisle because she just can't be married to someone like me.
And I want to add that I feel very sad watching this. I feel sad that this is still the case, you know, that there can be people who might not like, you know, someone being bisexual. And I think, again, it ties into what I was sharing earlier in having certain pictures of what love looks like. You know, love is between a man and a woman. There are no other people that are attractive all of a sudden. And in this case, I know that one of the biggest misconceptions about bisexual people is that, or actually the concern, I guess, is that, you know, if they can be attracted to both genders, am I going to be enough? You know, am I going to be enough? And so that, I think it ties into that picture that we have of what love and what a relationship should look like. And then when there's something unexpected like this, I mean, it can be unexpected, then that just brings confusion and fear, and yeah.
And I think I've always been like that. When I walked in the room for the first time I met you, I knew it was just like I was blown. I don't know how to explain it, but I walked around the right side of the couch, turned the corner, and you said, "Hey," and I was just like, "Yep, that's it." I don't understand why. You know, I tried to press the brakes, but you're the first person that's ever really got me.
You're the cutest thing ever, by the way.
What do you mean?
I just love when you get so passionate.
What do you mean?
I just want to hug you. Kind of everything you say, beyond anything I could have expected. Like, it was mind-blowing.
You know, my last girlfriend, I had my heart broken and stuff, and you know, I had gotten cheated on, whatever. It took this experience to really just like break down any kind of wall that I thought I had about my heart.
Yeah, there's something I'm noticing with Mark and Jessica that relates to being self-connected and the importance of connection with yourself in order to have connection with someone else. And it seems to me like they're saying all these things that are quite vulnerable. He's talking about his love for her. He's talking about how he's been cheated on. She's reacting to that. She's saying it was mind-blowing to hear. And I'm hearing the words and I'm not really touched. And that makes me kind of alert, like, hey, what's going on here? Like, I'm supposed to be touched by these words and I'm not. And so I think I think it's because they're sharing on this level of thought again. I think there's sometimes and I would have to check with them, right? But it sounds to me like they're saying things that they think they should be saying in these kind of situations. Like, she's saying, I just want to give you a hug. And I'm just like, maybe she does, but it doesn't really arrive. And I think it shows how it's really not that easy always to go for yourself to that level of feelings. Like, how am I really feeling about this? I also, I think Mark really likes her. I believe that. So that's also interesting, right? So it's not that he's not saying the truth. It's just that he's not saying it with a lot of connection to himself, to his heart that he's talking about, actually. And this is something I believe you can learn. I mean, it's easier for some than it is for others, but you can learn to be aware even of what you're really feeling and to also have this safety. I mean, a lot of people growing up don't have this example of how to do this and don't have experienced this safety of doing this. I mean, for men, it's a lot about, this is a bit generalizing, but for men, it's a lot about, you're not allowed to feel scared, you're not allowed to feel sad, boys don't cry. And I still see this, I've been babysitting a lot while being a grown-up, and I still see that happening. And for women, it's sometimes a bit more about anger, but that's a bit generalizing. In general, it's just that feelings aren't always welcomed, and just because we don't know what to do with them as parents, like, I also have compassion there. Like, oh my God, what do we do with all these feelings? It's uncomfortable. We don't want to see other human beings hurt, and that's where it starts. That's where we kind of want to try and fix the feelings quickly without actually really listening to them. And so that's how we grow up as from children to maturity, and we don't even know what we're feeling. It's just like we're cut off from this whole physical part. And so, if you hear your partner sharing something that you can't really, you just, you feel totally open to hear them and you're not triggered, and yet somehow it's not touching you. Like, he's sharing about being cheated on, which must have hurt like tremendously, I imagine. And somehow it seems like he's not feeling that in this moment, and maybe he doesn't want to. That's fine. But maybe I would want to connect with that a little bit, like to say like, oh wow, I hear you've been cheated on. That must have been really painful. And maybe he doesn't want to go there. That's fine. But just to have a bit more connection. That's what I would try. And if it's my partner and I trust him, I could even say something like, hey, can we slow down a little bit, because I'm hearing you share this story and I would really like to know, how was that really for you? Like, how does it feel now that you're talking about it? Actually, that's a good way to bring someone in connection with their current feelings, with their body, is to go to the now. Like, they're sharing about, they were cheated on, it was super painful, I was cheated on, and this and that, and oh wow, how does it feel now to say this? Like, how do you feel now about it? Well, actually, I still feel hurt, and I still feel scared to start a relationship. I'm just saying something, right? So to bring it to how is someone feeling now whenever they're sharing this story about the past.
And when I tell you, I really don't open up like how I am with you to anybody. Like, I want you. I ask you, you want to spend the rest of your life with me? Like, where's your mind at?
weeks. And like I can definitely see us walking out of here together.
I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Yeah. So maybe she does. And yet I don't believe... I cannot... I don't see it. Like it doesn't arrive in me. I don't know if you have the same thing. Something about... Something about, like, I would expect someone, I think, if when Mark says something, you know, like I would see myself married to you, something along those lines. If I would feel the same way, I would say, me too, you know, like, oh my God, me too. And instead she's taking a sip of her wine and it seems like almost like she's buying time. And then she's like, well, we've come a long way. In the cup, we spend days and it seemed like weeks or something like that. She's just starting to say words, kind of like, and then she's saying, yeah, I really can. It's kind of weird to say that. Yeah, I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. I think what's happening, and it's something about if I were him, let's say if I were him, I would say that, hey, you're saying these words and somehow it doesn't fully arrive. Is it that you need a bit more time to think about it? You know, I would just make a guess. If someone's saying these things and I'm just a bit suspicious about how they really feel, I would want to create a safe place. So I wouldn't want to say like, I don't believe you, like, kind of like what I was doing myself now. I would want to say like, hey, somehow your words don't really arrive. Like, is it that you need a bit more time? Is it that there is maybe some doubt in you, which would be super understandable, right? And I think that's actually what's going on, knowing from what she says after later in this show, I think. So yeah.
Are you sitting down or are you standing up?
I'm sitting down.
Do you want to approach the wall?
Yeah. Come up to the wall.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Lauren, Michelle Speed.
Holy shit.
I feel so blessed to have you come into my life. I love you so much, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me?
Oh my God. Yes. Yes, Cameron. I will marry you. I will be your wife.
What's up, girl?
What you doing?
Just chilling. How you feeling?
I feel really happy that you were my last date tonight.
I know who Jessica is still interacting with, and I know how they feel towards her. It's like, is she telling everybody the same thing? That's actually a big fear I have right now. I don't want to throw my heart out there and just like actually be, hurt. Don't blow smoke at my ass real quick.
Are you mad at me?
Huh?
Okay, this is interesting. So earlier we heard Barnett talking about how he feels about the situation of Jessica being in contact with Mark and being very close with him, and he hears Mark saying stuff about it, that they're getting closer and closer. And then she's saying, I really love to have you as the last date tonight. And he says, I never heard of that expression before, don't blow smoke up my ass real quick. I guess it means something like, don't just say the truth. Don't try to please me or try to charm me or something like that. I'm just saying it to myself. I guess you know what it means if you watch this. So there's a difference between the way he's speaking with his friends and when he's being kind of vulnerable, and here he's a little bit attacking, like he's a little bit saying, you know, you're trying to play with me, which is a little more like judgmental. And she picks up on that, which actually I like. She says, you know, are you mad at me? She's trying to say it in a light way, I think, because she doesn't want to make things heavy or something. But this is interesting. It's like the first moment where two people who were connecting before have a little first kind of like disconnection. And I guess it's interesting for me how they navigate that. And so in a way, I like that she's asking, are you mad at me? To connect with the feeling, right? She's trying to go that layer, like he's here, he's saying, don't blow smoke up my ass. And she's like, oh, are you feeling mad? She's inviting him to that vulnerable layer. And so the tricky thing so I was saying before that it's helpful to guess someone's feelings, and that does invite them to that more layer of more likelihood for connection. But asking for or guessing that someone's angry is a little more tricky, because anger in our society is something that sometimes we think you shouldn't be proud of. Like it's something that maybe you're supposed to hide a little bit. Although, you know, on the one hand, we sometimes like to show up angry rather than maybe being actually scared. And at the same time, if you would have to admit really like, yeah, I feel angry, especially I think a guy towards a woman doesn't really want to admit that usually, I think, because we associate anger also with aggression. And so it can be tricky. And sometimes when you guess with someone, you know, are you angry? It actually makes them more angry. Of course I'm angry, you know, like it can be, because there's a bit of vulnerability around that, it can actually trigger more anger to guess it. And so what you can do if you think you see anger in someone, in your partner, to say, is part of you angry? Is there some anger in you? Like one of these options, is part of you anger? Is there some anger in you? Because both of those options imply that you're not full of anger. There is you, and then there's this part of you that is triggered. And if you can say, if you can guess it that way, it's easier to admit, because it's easier to it's less shameful to say that, oh, it's just a part of me, and there's a bigger part of me that knows maybe that you didn't do anything wrong, or that is willing to still take care of you, or that's willing to take care of the situation. So it's easier to admit if you guess it that way.
Are you mad at me right now?
No.
Yeah, and you hear him saying no, which is kind of like, it sounds to me a little bit like, you know, when you ask a child, did you eat all the chocolate? And they're like full of chocolate, and they're like, you know, like it's, yeah. So, and understandably, it's not always safe to, or it doesn't always feel safe to admit that you're angry.
Talk to me.
Oh gosh. I'm going through so much turmoil right now.
Why?
Let me say something, because I feel like you don't know where my head is. Literally, I think you just got done with Mark. I knew that he had just left with you. He was so sure of everything, and that scared me. As soon as
I love it. Like, you know, he starts with a little bit of like a judgment, but he explains what happened in a very neutral way, like in a way that's not judgmental to her. He's just saying, you know, I heard you just dated with Mark, and I don't know, some way of describing that it went really well, and you know, I was scared.
Because I saw that, I was like, maybe she's just been kind of she wasn't feeling the way I was feeling.
You don't think I hear things on the other side? And there's multiple girls that really like you, but like the girls don't think you're serious.
So he's sharing this thing of like, you know, I heard another guy is really close with you, and Joe, I'm scared that you don't feel the same way for me. And I don't know how this is edited, so maybe there was something in between, so I want to, you know, give her the benefit of the doubt. But if I, you know, assume that it went like that you would have a talk like this, and you're saying, you don't think I'm hearing things about you? What you're doing is that you're someone outside looking at me how I'm filming. What you want to do when someone shares something vulnerable, they're in expression, right? They're expressing their feelings. And ideally, you would go in listening mode. Instead, she's also going in expressing, which means, so she's saying, you know, I have the same problem, you know, I want to be heard. And so that means there's two people in expression and there's no one listening. And so actually one definition of a conflict that I use is that there's two people expressing and there's no one listening. So there doesn't even have to be a big fight going on, but this can be the start of like a lot of disconnection when two people are expressing and no one is listening. And so what she could have done is to just reflect what he's saying. So to say something like, oh, you really want to know how I feel, how my feelings are for you. And probably he would have said, yes, yeah, that's what he wants to know. Or I could say like, oh, it was a bit scary to hear that I was also dating with Mark in this intimate way. To really just acknowledge his feeling, to reflect back his feeling.
It's about them. And literally, like, the military girl is gonna, like, kick my ass. I know it. Like, don't make this one-sided.
Jessica.
What? What?
You've been high on my list since the beginning. If this place had nobody, no other guys, and no other girls, like, I would propose to you tomorrow.
What?
You are my...
See, here her reaction is different. Here I can hear that she would like that. She would like him to propose.
Yin to my yang.
I'm so fucking happy right now.
Okay, so that was it for this time. Wow, I'm super curious to hear what you thought of this, and if you feel like this is useful. I would love to hear questions and comments in the comments. And if you would like me to watch more of this show, let me know. Also, if you would like me to watch another show, I think it's interesting actually to watch more of this show, to see how it's going, because it's quite the suspense, right? Yeah, so please like this video if you liked it, and share it with anyone you think might like this as well, might find this useful, and I would love to see you next time. Ciao!